And if it's a simple tap of the phone to be with the warning that all that seemed safe and was about to fall apart. I have always believed that there are certain things don't happen to us. That is the danger, destiny, and the choices are wrong, to belong, the stories of distant places, the people who are living off of the hook. Maybe that's why I do it. Took a few seconds to realize that at that time, when the phone rang behind the counter, something I was choosing without asking for permission. Work in the bar, the oldest in the city, a place where everything is predictable. The other for the cause of the fear. In the same table, the same faces, the same conversation repeated night after night. A place where the silence is never mean a threat to be. When I got it, I didn't expect anything but the ordinary. But the voice on the other end, don't go with that scenario. It was not accidental. It was not confusing. It wasn't a mistake. It was an emergency, flashing, loaded with a rush that made my body react to it before on the back of my mind. The question came in a direct, matter-of-factly, as if there was no time for explanations. Where is the house? My heart raced, and my throat dried up, and I was left in silence for too long. It didn't sound as out of curiosity. It sounded like a warning disguised as a question. Even without knowing the reason, I felt like I was in that connection. It should never have come to me. I've tried to follow through with the routine, because when something threatens to spiral out of control, the US clings to the familiar. The bar was still full, and the laughter continued to be high. The glasses were still being served. But it's inside of me, something I had been out of place. It was as if the entire city had breathed in the wrong for 1 second, and is the only one I have seen. Hello, my name is Sophia, and I learned early on not to draw attention to it. I was never out of curiosity. I had never been to the confusion, and I in a past that they'd rather keep buried. Even so, in that connection, it aroused fear, the fear that I realized, without knowing exactly where it came from. Even after turning off, the power of the voice was still echoing in the back of my mind. Why do any of us would have gone to a bar looking for him? That seemed to be so cruel. For that, it sounded as if someone was running out of time. I thought I'd take a note of the number, having made some more questions, and that the fault has started to grow quiet, insistent like a warning, one that refuses to be ignored. Perhaps you felt something like this. The feeling foreign and strange. It's a little detail that is going to turn into something that's too big to be contained. Minutes later, the door swung open. And from that point on, things got even more confusing. The house as Robert came into the bar, and with the peace of mind of one who does not carry a hurry in the eyes. Quiet, safe, secure, as if you were just passing through. The weather was just too perfect for it to be comfortable. My stomach sank as my mind was trying to gather the pieces that I did not want to see it. Is that there was a link between him and escape, or I was seeing signs where it does not exist. Nothing in it seemed to be urgent, but everything about him seemed to be aware of, such as one that looks the most in the It shows. By the time he got to the counter and made a simple request, and our conversation was short, was born and raised in charge of something that hasn't been said to you. We talked a little, we looked to the others. I felt as if he was speaking and he understood that I was just nervous, don't know why. What I felt at that moment, to me, has destabilized. It was not the only attraction. He was alert all the time. It was as if something inside of me said that it was dangerous, while the other part insisted that I couldn't tear myself away. What I didn't know is that Robert wasn't there by accident, and that, in that connection, the meeting, and that the silence of the shared part of something much greater than I could have imagined. As I was trying to keep track of my own routine, your destiny had just begun to cross over the lines that you should never touch each other. And it is precisely from this point on, the story goes on to win the weight, other pace, leaving up in the air, a tension that you can't even explain it. But it is getting closer. While all of this was still brewing inside of me, and I realized that I wasn't the only one feeling this sadness stranger in his chest, the stories just don't come to us by accident. They touch on something that is already there, within you, even we don't know to explain. Maybe, at some point in your life, you will also have to have lived at a moment in which the seemingly simple, a phone call, a meeting, a detail out of place, a place that has totally changed the way in which you could see what it was. If this has happened to you, write it here in the comments. Doesn't have to be a long one. Sometimes just putting it out already, it makes us a better understanding of the church. I read every comment carefully because it is here that the story is no longer my own and shall be ours. When you say you don't, you are just giving your opinion. You are helping this message to reach others who may need to hear something like this right now. And if at some point in this story you pinned it, I did stop for a few seconds, or made you curious about what comes next, the leaves and the like. This is to show that this sort of narrative to make sense, it is worthwhile to continue telling a story that is moving. For many women, they bristle. And if you feel like you want to keep up with what's coming next, subscribe to the channel for real. This is what keeps this story alive and allows it to continue to be told in the right way, with time, care, and emotions. From here, things get more intense, more sensitive, and more dangerous, and that it is not just the beginning of a story, and it's to the point where nothing else can be safely ignored. After I hung up, I tried to go back to what I've always been able to do this, to look normal. It's almost automatic. Do you smile at just the right time, responds to a tune, you take a drink, a clean desk, listening to a joke, and repeated it as if it were the first time. The bar was packed as it always did. The sound of the conversation was pounding on the walls of the old wooden chairs rangium. The ice maker was making the noises of the family, which, on any other day, and I would be comfortable with. Only that night, it all seems to be going on in front of me, as if I had to go back to the glass. I looked at all the people, and I thought to myself, they have no idea at all. No one there. He had realized that something had changed because for them, nothing had changed in it. It was the same. The smell of drink mingled with the deep frying. The same signs are to be feared in the window, and even the radio playing low in the corner. And perhaps this is where the danger comes in. By not making a fuss, no tipping, nothing, no warning. It will only fit into a routine, quiet, and waits for you to take a deep breath. And then you realize that the air has changed. The phone almost never rings at a bar. Those who want to talk about it with someone go over it, because it's a small town. When it comes, it is always predictable. To a provider, by confirming the delivery, someone is asking if there is still a table. A person is lost, looking for an address. Only in that connection, she did not fit in with anything. It had a weight that was not supposed to be there, in the middle of a place that is so common. And the worst part is that I couldn't explain this in words. It was a sensation, a warning to the body, as if someone had touched a part of my world and put it back in, almost in the same place, just a millimeter away from the axis. You look at it and think, it's all the same. But on the inside, you know, if I continue to pretend that nothing had happened, for a time, it's going to break. I've washed my hands more times than I needed to, just to get the what to do with them. I grabbed a towel and started drying glasses, which were now dry. Each and every sound is louder, and I turned to face it, thinking that someone had come in. Every laugh, and I felt like I was cheating on him with the gravity of the moment, as I don't have the right to laugh in the night. And the strange thing is that I don't know the exact reason for me to feel this way. I just knew that something was going on behind the scenes of my life, and I've been pulled in close to no preparation. There is a kind of transformation, is that it is not beautiful, it is not awe-inspiring, it does not have the soundtrack. It's just a change of quiet in the way that you see it all. The trust that you had in the normal starts to play. The mindset that you requested, this doesn't have anything to do with me, it's not on my account, you will go, is starting to seem like a lie and comfortable. And that's where the decisions are dangerous, because if you're still in the same place, which is surrounded by the same group of people, but it is not the same on the inside. You can choose to ignore it, or you can choose to look in the face. Just to look at from the front, it has a price. You will start to see things that I didn't want to see it. I have felt that way at the minute. The bar is still functioning, but is in my head. I've been trying to remember your voice, the way she breathed before he speaks, the tone, almost in despair, the go into hiding. Where's the sheriff? In this sentence, he was repeating like an echo, in short, boring, and impossible to silence it. I wonder if I should have asked, why? I wondered for a moment if he should have said, who are you? And especially I asked myself, why is that a question had been reached as to whether it was personal? Because deep down, the truth hidden, not only in the link, it was me, my reaction to it. The fear that came far too quickly, as if I had seen anything like it before. I tried to convince myself that it was just a connection with the strange and weird people call all the time. But the feeling would not go away. It was as if, when you meet up, I had to open a door to the unseen. And the door is open does not close just because you want to. You can even pretend that it went out of business. You can turn your back. You can continue with cleaning the counter. But the air changed, and you will notice. I remember I looked up to the door of the bar, and the thought of that, for no reason, the rational, if he gets it now, I know that it's not a coincidence. It was a thought, stupid superstition. He had a certain absurd, as if some part of me was doing the accounts, which I have not yet had the courage to do the same. I've also started to pick up on details that I did not notice. On the way to a client that was looking out to the street before you drink it. On the way to a man on the corner, he stopped talking when I came near. In the silence, too soon after a common phrase. A few things, but that night they seemed to have an impact. As if the whole town was doing, holding a mask, as some are much better if you moved it from the bottom. And to me, the most upset was this. I had no proof of anything. It was only a hunch, just nervous, just a tightening in my chest. But at times, the lack of evidence does not mean lack of the truth. It just means that you haven't got close enough to see it. While I was at work, I noticed that the phone seemed to be different, right there on the desk, as if he had a physical weight is greater than ever before. I looked at him from the corner of your eye, as if he might have to play alone, as if the voice could have come back without any warning. I thought I'd call you back. Just to prove that it was anything but, we'll have to make a little bit out of control. But there was another feeling, a more cold, and if you and I connect, and they answer, as if he were looking for, and if that is the mere act of returning to it, is a decision that can change everything. You have choices that seem to be small, but they carry signs. I was beginning to learn that it is the journey that night. It was going to be made out of these choices. What do I do and what I am doing? I took a deep breath, trying to anchor it in the real one. The wood beneath my fingers, the sound of the frost, the smell of the bar. Its even breathing seemed to be in the wrong, as if I wasn't able to fill up the heart of the truth. It was then that I came up with a clearly uncomfortable, and that's the one place that has always been my refuge. It can also turn into a trap. Because when you're in the same spot every day, you will convince yourself that it is safe and secure. And safety, a repeated too much turnover. The routine was always the protection of a sudden becomes the perfect setting for something to go unnoticed. I was still trying to fit into that feeling when the door creaked again and the bar seemed to be a degree of quiet for half a second, the sort of silence that is not in the atmosphere. It is your mind ready for what is to come. I picked up the watch before they even know who it was, and for a moment I was the one sure of a strange again, as if the night was going to be the piece that was missing. Hello, my name is Sophia, and I've never been the kind of person that likes to be displayed. I learned early on that in a small town, to call attention to is how to turn a light on at the top of your head, and you invite the whole world to the point. Here, people don't forget. They have the details, save the look, save versions. So when someone decides to put you in a story that is not his own, all of a sudden you turn the subject without knowing how it happened. So I grew up with the mentality as simple. To be on my own, did not give a reason, it is not the food and conversation. It seems to change when you speak in a loud voice, and I know that. But in practice, is to survive. Maybe that's why this connection, it has hit me so strong. Not for what was said, but she was threatening to awaken inside of me. I am curious by nature. I do not like confusion. I hate the feeling of having people looking at it, thinking, drawing conclusions before you hear it. I spend my days trying to keep my life organized, predictable, and under control. But there's a part of me that I keep it closed, as it is a room that you have to latch on and pretend it doesn't exist. Past that, I'd rather not play it because when I touch you, it touches you back. And the strange thing is that I don't remember it all. I don't have a scene in a clear, rational explanation and a reminder as a whole. I have a litter, feelings, the chemical reactions, as if something had been buried deep, and even so, my body, you still know the way to it. And that's what it came to pass when the voice inquired for him. The fear came from before the mind, his throat dry, heart racing, the goosebumps. This is a reaction that doesn't agree with the only connect. This is a reaction that has an impact, that shows that there is a truth hidden behind it normal that I try to keep up. I tried to ignore it. I swear that I've tried. I said to myself that it was nothing, that it was the one wrong, it was some of the drama in a drunken stupor, and that the town is always to invent something and then forget to do so. It's more that I speak. My body didn't buy that story. My hand was still shaking a little bit when I first picked up a glass. I breathed in short. It was as if the air were to be costly. In my head, ask who I don't want to respond to. I was so nervous. Why do I feel guilty? Why do I shut down? It was a mistake. The phone does not have the weight of an object of the ordinary. It seemed like a decision resulted in there, silent, waiting for me to pull over to the new one. And it is at this point in time that you realize how life changes in the silence. It is not an explosion hazard. It is not a built-in siren. Is it with a twist, with a touch of, in a sentence? And that's it. You in your journey, giving you a curve and you don't want it. You get to see a picture of everyday life with a new filter. The bar is where I work, which has always been the most predictable of the world. All of a sudden, it seemed to be a stage where anything could happen and no one noticed. The laughter of the customers have been a distant sound, as if I was listening to under the water's surface. All the conversations that seem to be appreciated too. I've got to pay attention to the behind the scenes. Who walks in when looking at the outside, the one who is silent when the phone is ringing, who changes the topic when I step in. And it was only then that I noticed something annoying about me. I can't pretend that I'm not curious, but I'm a human being. And when something threatens your sense of security and you want to understand it, not because you like the drama, but that's because you need to recover on the ground. Just do it. It's too dangerous. To understand it requires making decisions, and decisions require courage in the face of revelations that could destroy the version that is comfortable for your life. I had to choose too many times not to look at it. Don't ask me, don't poke. It was so much easier. I used to tell myself that it was a mature self-control and peace. But that night, I felt like I might be afraid of it. The fear of finding out that my story had blanks for one reason or another. Fear of touch in the past, and to realize that it was never really the past, in fact. The fear of being drawn into a conspiracy larger than me, and those who start with something small, and then when you see it, you have too many of the people involved and too quiet in the first 9 months. I tried to go back to work, focus on the present, to do what I always do. It's just that the gift was tainted. The link, I put a drop shadow on top of it all. And shadow is not gone, just because you have seen their faces. She will follow up with you. It changes the way in which you play the role of a look, A pause. A door opened. I thought I'd tell you to anyone, but just imagine the kind of reaction I would be. Laughter, no exaggeration, the people making up the release, we transformed it into gossip. And I don't want to give that power to anyone else. I wanted to understand it first. I wanted to make sure, even though for sure it was just a confirmation of what I was getting paranoid. It's just that, deep down, I knew that it wasn't paranoia. I know it because my body would not let him. And because of that question is, where is the sheriff? It had not been thrown up in the air. It had all been like I was a part of the path up to it. It scared me in a way that I had no other way to explain it. If I was a part of the path and then someone didn't know me, and if someone didn't know me, so I wasn't as invisible as I am always trying to be. I was stuck between two versions of myself. The story that avoids the issues and evidence, agreed, that feels like something is about to happen. And when you get to this point, you understand and agree that the transformation is not a choice, it is a result thereof. You say, if you can't help, or if you are going to face. I was still trying to figure out which of the two I would have been in when the door of the bar creaked again, and in that half-second of silence followed, as if the whole city in her breath away with me. I raised my eyes, and a feeling that came from it was so familiar and frightening, as if it's my past. I had just given them one step closer to the inside of my night. Even after I shut down, I can still hear that voice, as if the phone was stuck in my ear. Where's the sheriff? It wasn't just a phrase. It's in the way. The race is hidden, and the despair restrained, as if they were holding back a scream so as not to be heard by someone else on the side. And the more I tried to convince myself that it was just a connection to the strange, to my body, I cheated on her, repeating the same reaction. A racing heart, shortness of breath, feeling like I had been placed in the middle of something that happened behind the scenes in the city for a long time. I began to ask myself questions that I didn't want to do it. Why do any of us would have gone to a bar looking for him? And why is that, Tom? If you were to be a common person, the person would be attached to the police station. If it was just a question, I would have asked you the name of it or the time of day. But it's not the person. He knew what he wanted, and he knew where to look, as if the bar were to be a part of the map. It bothered me in a way that was profound, because I've always seen this place as a place of refuge, such as a corner of a neutral where people can come to hide away your own life for a few hours. And all of a sudden, I was faced with the possibility that there is nothing in there that was so neutral as well. The more I thought about it, the more the question, it turned into the other by a low that I answered. Why is that the connection has dropped just me? I know it sounds paranoid, but there are times where the fact that it has an impact on the weird, as if the life was pushing you to know, and I felt like I was in one. Because I couldn't afford to ignore, to pretend that this has not happened, you keep the mindset of, it's not me, or I could just look. That's something I was asking for a decision, even if I still don't understand the price. I should have written down the number. It was a nagging question. The one regret as a kid, but insistent, like a pebble in your shoe that you're trying to ignore. And the more you walk, the more it hurts. I was supposed to have made to most of the questions. I should have said, who are you? Why are you looking for him? Did something happen? It's just that at the time, I just wanted to shut down. It was an instinct. He was scared. And now, thinking about it slow, and I realize just how much fear it is effective in a clear opportunity. It doesn't need to make noise, and it only makes you act too fast. And then I left with the consequences. I have to try to occupy it, but the connection came back on the radio waves. I served him a drink, and the phrase came up. I have all of the change, and the phrase came up. I was smiling to someone else, and the phrase came up. And what's worse is that it was always with a sense of a countdown, as if someone was running out of time, as if I'd listened to a piece of something larger, and now my mind tried to fill in the rest yourself. This is where your imagination becomes your enemy, because it creates the scenarios too. But at the same time, the imagination is also a camera. She reacts to that. We are still not able to name it. I started to look at the phone as if it were an animal to sleep. Any vibration in the counter, it made my skin crawl. And I thought again, turning back to them. Just to see you, just to prove to myself that I was overreacting. Just to try and win back some control. Because control is something that many people think they have to realize that you don't have it. Just then, there came another idea that is cooler, more rational one. And if you turn back, you are exactly what this person wants. What if I can do it, and they answer as if you were looking for? And if I have to listen to the other side, there was a silence that said more than words. The guilt was growing in a way that was strange, because I hadn't done anything wrong. And yet, I felt like I had failed. Maybe it's because of the connection I had been given the chance to understand a little before it can explode, and I backed away. Maybe it's because I've always felt that it was a notice to you, and I have chosen peace, false, after I see you. Just do not expect us to be ready. They will arrive when they arrive, and if you ignore them, they come back in a way that was worse. I've also started to think about him, not in the office, but in a way that the name carried. The sheriff in this town. It's not just a title. It's a symbol of, this is the one that appears when a truth is hidden comes to light, and no one wants to take responsibility, is the one who broke the silence. It is that changes, rumor has it, in fact. So when you say it, with that sense of urgency, does not seem to a request for information. Seems like a cry for help, or it is a warning to evacuate. And it is this ambiguity that gave me the chills. The bar and followed him the living of the people around me, but I was already on a new layer in the evening. I felt as if I had crossed an invisible line, and now to see him in the same place with a different light. The laughter seemed to be higher than they should be. The glasses seemed to hit it with more force. And so I began to take notice that in a small town, the silence is not the absence of a thing, is the presence of a secret. All over the world, you know, a little bit, but no one ever tells you everything you need. I didn't know that, maybe. I was just about to pull over one of those secrets that the city has learned to protect themselves. With every minute that passed by, I felt that the connection was changing me from the inside out, a transformation from a small but real, but I couldn't go back to a version of me that believes that all of this is normal. My mind was on high alert, measuring up to the possibilities, thinking about the consequences. And when you do, you will realize that your journey is not just about what's outside, it's about what's going on inside, about how do you get to see and the kind of decisions that you will be able to make when all the pieces begin to fall into place. It was only then that I found myself looking at the door again, no pattern, but by intuition. I knew that the night was not yet over for me to show that I was hiding it. The phone remained quiet for a while, but I just couldn't trust the silence. And in the midst of that thought, as if it was drawn by an invisible thread, and I heard the creaking sound of the door opening again, and I felt my entire body to prepare you before you even recognize who was coming in. The door swung open, and for a moment, I felt as if the whole bar she had lost in the rhythm. It was not a total silence. People were still talking, laughing, banging glasses, but it was 1/2 of a second in my mind to take a break, as if someone had pulled the brakes from the inside out. I picked up the watch before they even processed the sound of the creaking sound, and my body was the one for sure you uncomfortable, that it comes when something fits into a moment too soon. It was then that my stomach sank. He walked at an unhurried pace. No drama. Without the power of the urge that I had hoped for after the jump. The House of Robert. I recognized it at the time, not just by the cover, but due to the fact that he caused it. In a small town, there are certain appearances in the carry is a type of weight. Not fear exactly, is the respect mixed with fear. It's as if the people in it, Even without admitting it, they would know at first. It tends to bring the revelations, and no one wants to see the truth hidden from appearing in the table, are still trying to pretend that life is easy. Robert went quiet, safe and secure. The type of security that is not noisy, it is not arrogant, does not ask for attention. It is, on the contrary, he seemed like someone who would prefer to watch than to speak, and so for some reason it made me the more anxious that if he went in a hurry. Because of the urgency of the people get it. The urgency is clear, but calm down. Calm at a time when a wrong is like a blade that is hidden from view. A calm, it seemed to say that he was in for something bigger. I just did not want to show it. The weather was just too perfect. This is the first thing that I thought about it, and I hated myself for thinking that. Because when you realize that you have all the time that is too perfect, you will also notice that it is starting to be suspicious of the world. And I don't want to be that person. I've always run away from the poison of the conspiracy to imagine it, ulterior motives. Just that right there, that connection is still whirling in my head. At the entrance of it seemed to be a response to what I had asked. And the answers will not come just by chance. I felt the fear of putting the pieces together, and I'm not exaggerating. He was afraid of it. Why join a piece means to recognize a drawing of it, and recognize it's a drawing. You have to accept who you are in him. My mind began to race. Is it the person who did it was trying to warn you that it would? You will be seeking for him because he could not afford to look for another job. That is, the connection that had been a test. Just to see if I was there, I went. The bar was actually a point of contact. Then, suddenly, the phone on the counter. No longer just an object, and then turned into a symbol of, a line that connects things that are not supposed to be on. And so I did what I always do when I'm trying to keep my mindset strong. I focused on the nuts and bolts. The jacket of his, the way he pushed her to the door. A quick scan he's ever done with the eyes, it does not appear that he was looking for nothing, but in getting it. I have noticed how he didn't get stopped at the entrance. Do not hesitate to leave. He decided on a balcony how to choose a strategic place. It is not necessarily a comfortable one. And it gave me a different type of impact, because the people who leak don't usually have that level of detail. The bar was still alive, but all around him things seemed to adjust its volume. A few people looked at it quickly and went back to talking. Others pretended that you didn't even see. I know this. It is a polite way that the lively city has to say, I don't want to get involved. And ironically, I was just trying to do the same thing, just that my body would not let him. My breath was short, and I could feel a tension in my jaw, as if I was holding on to the words that I didn't even know what it was. When he came to it, I have felt for a pulse it was silly to hide his hand, as if he were to realize that she was shaking. I hated myself for it. I hadn't done it at all. I'm not supposed to be nothing, but it felt as if I was keeping it a secret without even knowing it. And at the same time, there was something else growing up under the fear of a curiosity, and more dangerous. With the same curiosity as you, I swear to you that I don't have. And she was right there, alive to prick me. Look at me. You know what's going on. Does not shy away from this one. He stood at the counter, and for a second I thought he was looking directly into the phone, but it's not. He looked up at me, and it wasn't a look invasive, those that make us feel exposed. It was a look as if he were trying to read something that I didn't want to leave it written on my face. The feeling was strange, because I had the impression that he already knew it. I was not comfortable, and didn't seem surprised by this. Don't like someone you know, as someone who understands. And then came the question that I could not keep silent. He had a connection with the so-called. Or was it just a coincidence? This is the kind of mistake that changes the course of her journey to a pure twist of fate. I want to believe in coincidence. I wanted to, because of a coincidence. It does not require tough decisions. Coincidence that it does not require courage. A coincidence makes you come back to the home and family. But my instincts say otherwise. He said that I was just seeing the beginning of something, and in the beginning it always seems too small to account for what comes next. The most disturbing is that nothing in it seemed to be urgent. He came in with a rush, did not ask for information, and did not look at the clock. But all in all, it seemed to be aware of it, as if he were working in, even when it appeared to be relaxed. And it is this contrast that made me stuck in a weird state. Part of me wanted to breathe and think it's all right, and the other part wanted to run away, as if I had just been listening to a warning and you don't know what it meant. I felt like, at the minute it's my life, I was being pushed to a point of transformation of a culture. The kind of transformation that begins in the detail, a look, a presence. And then, when you realize you can no longer go back to the version of himself that he believed that the world was a simple one. Robert was still there, standing in front of me, and I had the feeling that every word that I say, you could turn around to a decision. Any silence that I keep it could turn into one another. I just don't know which one of them is going to turn out to be more than that. I was ready to face it. He walked over to the counter, such as those who are not in a hurry, but do you know exactly where you want to go? It was not a sharp move or studying too much. It was natural, almost polite, and I still feel the impact even before he stops in front of me. When making the request, it was a simple, straightforward, as if it were just another normal night. The voice tight, controlled, and without a second thought. Maybe it was destabilized. There is nothing in it. It seemed out of place, and while it's all on me, I was. I told him, in the automatic transmission, using the same tone, the professional, that we learn how to hide it, you feel in your heart, to the truth. Your words have been a few measures. It raised the other, to what was going on beneath the surface. It was as if the conversation is real, it's happening at a different level, in a space where the sentence is not reached. It was obvious, but we saw that it was not said to you. Every second seemed to carry a weight that is invisible, as if anything else could be to turn on a track, a mistake, a revelation, a quick learner. I did look at him, at me, in a different way. It was not invasive, nor to the judge. He was aware of. A look for those who are accustomed to notice the small changes, the micro-reactions, deflections, almost imperceptible. And it messed with my mindset is more than I want to admit to, because it made me realize how much I was exposed to, and without saying a single word. The slight delay in my reply, his breathing is a little shorter, and the care of exaggerated when you pick up your drink at all times. A few things, but for someone like him, perhaps did not pass unnoticed. At the same time, I was watching over them. The way he leaned his hand on the counter, a firm, no-stress benefits. The posture is relaxed too for someone who's just went for it. In the stillness that seemed to conceal a movement of an internal steady, as if his mind were always a few steps ahead of you. That gave me an impact on Silent, because I felt like it was in the face of someone who does not live in a state of alert, standing, even when things get quiet. And that creates an atmosphere of a strange, almost magnetically, to where the silence begins to speak more loudly than any of the dialogue. There was a moment, a short, almost imperceptible, and in our eyes crossed for too long. It was not uncomfortable, but it is also not clear. It was as if, for a second, something that had long been recognized on both sides, without even a name. I felt an urge to look away, but I have resisted, not because of courage, but out of curiosity. That curiosity is dangerous, that comes on when you feel like you are on the verge of a truth that is hidden, those that will change the way you see it, its own journey. I realized then that he noticed my nervousness, not because he said something else, but that's because his look has changed slightly, as if he had adjusted the focus. There was no accusation there, not a surprise, just a fact. And that made me even more worried, because it made me think about how some people think they can hide their feelings, when in fact, the body is always in the delivery of anything. In my attempt to appear normal to you, might be saying just the opposite is true. As I was saying, I thought he was on the phone. The connection, the question still echoed. I asked him if he knew anything, he had been in there for the sake of a clue, or if all of that was just a collection of some poorly explained. The mind can go a long way when you're on high alert, and every opportunity seemed to open up a new layer. In that situation, I still don't fully understand. I was fully aware that every word out of place, it could have an impact. Even I didn't know what it is. Your order has been delivered to him, and he stayed there for a few seconds longer than necessary. Made no additional questions of your own. It is not struck up a conversation. Only it was as if he was soaking up the atmosphere by reading between the lines of the evening. I've had the odd feeling that in that brief touch had been enough to change anything. Small it may be, the unseen and with certainty, but it's real. Something had shifted inside of me, an insight into the new account that did not exist before. When he finally pulled away a few inches and I took a deep breath, not realizing that he was holding it in the air. It was only then that I realized just how much that one meeting, the short, was required of me. There was no fighting, there was no disclosure of the explicit, but there was a silent exchange that left me with the feeling of entering into a phase that is different from my own story. A step in which the decisions, they would not be put off so easily, and where to ignore the signs, it would have cost more money. I stood there, watching from the sidelines, trying to rearrange my thoughts, as he felt that the presence had left the marks that are still going to come forward. And maybe you've already experienced something similar. That the meeting was brief, seemingly simple, that it changes your perception and makes you get out of the auto. If this has happened to you, write in the comments, in a single sentence, something like, "It was then that I felt that things were going to change," because sometimes to recognize that the time for words to help you understand the impact it has had. What I feel right there to me has destabilized in a way that I wasn't ready to admit it. It was not that the attraction is obvious. It's easy to find and even easier to ignore. It was something more confused, more in depth, as the two opposing forces had agreed on the inside of me, and at the same time. One part I would say to stay away, to not get involved, to remind you of all the reasons why I have always chosen to stay on the sidelines. The other part of it, quiet and stubborn, he was saying just the opposite is true. Don't walk away. Not now, not like this. It was an alert, that an internal, almost physical. When you're about to cross the street and you feel, not seeing that it is happening too fast. It's just that while at the same time, there was a curiosity to the strange, is a type of connection that cannot be explained by logic. I've never felt that before. Not in that way, not with this intensity, the word, without a gesture, large, with no direct words. It was all very subtle and very domestic, and perhaps because of this that is so remarkable. I've tried to analyze why it's beautiful, as it always did. I told myself that it was just the situation, the fatigue, the connection to the strange, to the build-up of tension. But the more I tried to reduce everything to a simple explanation, the more I realized that I was missing. Because there was something in that presence who moved in with the mindset that desmontava a way that is organized, which I have used to cope with the world. It was as if my journey up until then, predictably, he had gained a strange, invisible, and I had to stop in the middle, not knowing which step to take. The most disturbing is that there is nothing explicit happens. No touch, no sentence is ambiguous, any gesture that could be pointed to as the cause. Yet the inner conflict he was growing up. I could feel your body reacting to it before the mind, as some of the older part of me recognized a pattern that I couldn't see it. It made me think about how the decisions of our life are made as well, in that quiet between the instinct and the fear. And how many times, for the transformation starts at exactly where, when something breaks down net neutrality and we need to feel it. I found myself looking at the little things that on any other day would not be of importance. The gap between the breath, the way he seemed to be too comfortable in that environment, the way nothing of it asked for attention, and yet, all of her. This led me to think uneasy. Maybe the one that most frightens him, not to be a danger to the explicit, but the only thing that draws us in, even when you know that you can get from the axis. There's always a kind of truth hidden in this connection, of a truth about ourselves, about what to avoid, what we want to deny it. As I was trying to keep control, an external, in something that was clearly out of order, I felt that this encounter is so brief, seemingly simple, was created by an impact that did not go off easily, as if a door had been unlocked inside of me, revealing a hallway that I really didn't want to go through. The conflict was not about him, to be exact. It was about me. The version of me who has always chosen to safety instead of risk, in silence at the time of the fighting, the routine at the time of the disclosure, the thought. The more disturbing it was to realize that the same feeling of fear, and I didn't want things to end there. I didn't want to make the most of a detail missed in the evening. There was something in me that I needed to understand, who I needed to keep track of what I was building up. And it scared me because it meant you have to accept that. And from that point on, the bypass would not be a more comfortable option. On the journey, he had made a new tone, and I knew that the next few decisions that would need me more than I can offer. I took a deep breath, trying to rearrange your mind, but the feeling still remained firm, such as a wire, stretched, ready to be pulled up. It was impossible to go back to the previous state, while in the automatic mode. Something that she had started right there, in that space between fear and attraction to you, and I know that's going to unfold in ways I could not have foreseen. Perhaps it is for this reason that the stories so hold on to both of the people, because they are born exactly at the weak point, where we recognize it by mistake. What if, somewhere inside of you, the sensation too sounds familiar? Maybe it's because you understand what it means to feel that something is changing, yet not knowing how. If you want to continue to walk with me on this road full of silence, decisions, and the revelations that come closer slowly, and it gets around here. Sometimes a follow-up story to the end is the best way to understand on our own. What I didn't know it at the time is that none of that was happening. It was random. In the presence of Robert at the bar, it was not the result of habit, not out of curiosity, not of chance. As I was trying to manage my own feelings and to understand the conflict a stranger inside of me, there was a movement silent, going far beyond the balcony, away from the eyes of the common, behind the scenes in the city. One of those moves that you don't appear to have a chat in a bar, but that shape our destinies. Robert was leading an operation that is active to those who make a fuss or draw attention. It was the kind of work that requires patience, reading, behavior, memory, and a long one. He was hunting for someone who knew the city like no one else, someone who didn't really know where to go unnoticed by, where they blend in, where to disappear, and without arousing suspicion. A new name, those who barely speak more loudly. A man is polite who was never one to draw attention to it, but that's always been close to enough time to see everything. The constant presence, the shadow of the family, someone who seemed to be a part of the landscape, which makes it all the more unsettling it is to understand how this will happen. It is not like in the movies with the lights on or persecution to be visible. It is made from the observation of the little clues, from the repeating patterns of the course of the year. People like that don't run away so far away. They are hiding in plain view. Create routines, build relationships, adopt a mindset of the normal as well, the test that no one questions it. And that is precisely what makes them the truth, hidden so hard to reach. You need to look out for in whether he could be hiding something extraordinary. Robert, I was sure of one thing, and that he was very close to finding it. Not because he had a proof, but that is because I felt that kind of belief, born of experience. When you spend too much time following the tracks of a human, You can learn how to recognize the point at which the day-to-day close, as the number of options decreased, when the words begin to line up. And then, even I didn't know any of that yet, that you were present in the atmosphere, hanging like a weight that is visible. It's strange to think that, while I am worried about a call, unexplained, and out of my own internal decisions, someone is there. I was focused on something much bigger, something that could cause you a real impact on the city as a whole. The revelations of this kind will never affect just one person. They will move with the stories of the old, in with the silence held for the sake of convenience, with the arrangements said. They will force everyone to review the versions of the past, which seem to sound too much to be questioned. It is perhaps for this reason that Robert seemed to be so easy. He was not quiet for a lack of urgency, but due to the excessive legibility he knew that he was close to. And once you know this, you do not need to run. Just watch, wait for the error, a gap, and the detail is out of place. The transformation happens like this. First, the perception of and after the action. And to me, without knowing it, he was stopped right in the middle of the process, while the start of something you didn't have a name. For while he lingered there, an integral part of the scene, as if it were part of the daily routine, I felt that the night would carry more information than it looked. It is as if each little thing he will hide the layers, as if the silence were the one to choose. And you might also have noticed that at some point in their life, when things seem normal to others, it might be exactly that. The truth is just trying not to be seen. If this idea makes sense to you, write in the comments, in a single sentence, something like, "Sometimes the danger is hidden in the ordinary." At times, you put it into words to help you understand what a lot of us take for granted, until they fail to pass. There is a cruel irony being drawn there, silent, as I was trying to understand my own feelings and the weight of that night. The man Robert was looking for was not a stranger to anyone. There was not a name far away lost in the old reports. It was my father's. And it's the most disturbing thing about all this is that I had no idea. I never imagined that I would. For me, it's just part of the backdrop of my life, with someone that was there without raising too many questions, without drawing attention, in exactly the way that it is the city of love. While I was there, in the back of the counter, feeling that connection, confused and trying to get my internal decision-making, and the target had already crossed the lines, they need to play the connection of the meeting. On the lookout, every detail seemed to be isolated. It is harmless to it, but together they created a design is impossible to ignore. Nothing is a coincidence, even though at that moment everything seemed to loose too much to take shape. It's strange to realize as the life constructs a certain pitfalls in the emotional and with so much tenderness. As long as I felt something rise inside of me, a mixture of curiosity, alert, and in a strange proximity of the danger, it was already installed on it, growing up in the silence. Not as a clear threat, but as a constant, pervasive in the routine, the hidden behind the scenes of what I would call normal. The truth is hidden. It rarely comes in screaming. She prefers to approach slowly, trying as far as it can go without being noticed. If I did, they might all have been different. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe the impact would be even greater, because you know how it changes your mind, but it does not eliminate the conflict. Thinking about it, I do understand how some days they begin before you even realize one of them. I was experiencing a transformation that is not asking for it, being pushed to a point of revelation that would put into question everything I thought I knew about my own story. The most disturbing is to see how the feelings and the threats that they can coexist in the same space. While something in me opened up, if you asked, if it was, another thing well all around, preparing for the consequences, I still had no way to predict. The city was still the same, and the people were following him with their lives. But there was an invisible thread connecting you to everything that the past has never been so far away as I thought. And maybe that's what scares you, is to find what looks like a solid. You can hide the layers, start of the silence, and some of the old ones. The joint may be only a mask of the well-rehearsed. I was far from understanding of the size of the impact that this night would be, but it was beginning to feel that nothing would be easy. There was something moving, something's coming, and even without being able to see it clearly, I just knew that this was only the beginning of a match silent as to who I was going to be, who my father really was, and the way that Robert was willing to follow, step by step, getting closer and closer. Robert ended up in the drink with the same calmness with which I had entered. There was no hurry. It's not that the gesture is typical of someone who is running around looking for something. It was a movement of simple, almost ordinary, and it is precisely for this reason. He seemed to carry more weight than it should be. I've watched every detail of it as if in some way that I could give you an answer. The way he put the cup on the counter, the sound of the glass by tapping on the hardwood, to the short break before standing up. I felt as if the air around me was more dense, as if the night had decided to hold their breath along with me. When he woke up, I had an impulse to the irrational to say something to you, anything at all. A phrase is neutral. It is a question of silly in a comment on the weather or anything that would break that silence, which was becoming a topic of conversation. But I don't know what it is. Not because I lacked the words, but because I lacked the courage to choose a direction, because at that time I had a feeling that the sentence would be a positive. In any sentence, it would open a door that I may not be able to close it after you. It's weird how we are feeling at the time. That there is according to the precise of your life, it can change because of one little thing. Not a tragedy, not a great feature, but by a choice of simple, to talk or not talk, look or to turn aside, to insist on or back off. In my mind, it always has been trained to avoid risks, such as I was fighting for something new that was growing in me, a desire to understand, to get closer to the truth, hidden in time to keep moving around it as if it does not already exist. I stood there, pretending to be busy but are looking at. He didn't seem mad, don't seem to be worried about. And it bothered me in a way that was deep and profound, as I was nervous for the two of us. I was charging up the voltage to which it did not show. And when the person remains still and calm, the other in a setting full of opportunities, we begin to wonder what they know that others don't. That question was running in my mind like a circle with no way out. Robert straightened his coat and made a movement in a discreet as anyone who is preparing to go away, and for a moment I felt a pinch of relief, such as whether it could be taking away from this overwhelming sense that something was about to happen. But the relief was short-lived, because it is at the same time, at the start it seemed to be a silent threat. He would come out from thence, taking with him a part of the answer, and I would be stuck with too many questions inside of me. I thought, at the phone again, on the link, the voice blurred by asking for it, and then, suddenly, everything took on a new meaning. Up until this point, the call was just a strange event, something out of the ordinary that he had placed me on high alert. But now, with him gone, the connection seemed to be a point of departure, as if someone had tried to achieve with Robert for an alternative path, and in which for some reason this way I could have passed through me. I couldn't explain to you why I came, but I felt like I was being wrapped in something that was already there before I even noticed. The bar was still in the same mess to the organized than ever. Laughter, noise, people talking loudly, and yet I felt like I was alone, just as if you were in a place in parallel, which is a little out of place in the life of the other. This is the kind of feel it has an impact because it changes your perception. You'll see the routine in such a scenario, and you begin to suspect what is behind it, behind the scenes, the layers, silence, what no one tells you, but what holds it all. Before I get to the door, and Robert stopped him, It was not a gesture heavy, it was not a great thriller. It was only a short pause, as if he had felt something, and then he looked back at me one last time. It was not a long look, not pushy. He had to. Straightforward, for a look that seemed to carry an entire sentence without saying a word. I felt my chest tighten up, because at that second I was under the impression that he had seen a lot more of what I want to reveal to you. Not a judgment, but as a record, as someone that saves the information. Nothing is said to you, but all in all it was a burden. The silence between us seemed to have the texture. It seemed to be taking up space. I don't know if that look was only for education, only as a gesture of farewell, or if it was a silent way of making me into something I don't yet understand. My mind tried to rationalize it, tried to come up with simple explanations, but the body was already in the other thread. The feeling of alertness came back strong, and along with it came under the impression that I was getting too close to some of the congregation that I did not choose. When he finally pushed the door and went in, I stopped for a second longer than usual, as if the world had been able to and that I had been left behind. I took a deep breath, trying to regain control, but the connection from the beginning, it was echoed again, and now, with a clarity of scary. It's not just the, "Where's the sheriff?" It was, "Where can it be found? Where can it be achieved? Where will it be available?" All of a sudden, the question has ceased to be a curious one and turned into a strategic, as if someone was trying to pull a Robert for a specific site or to indicate that something is about to happen. And I don't fully understand, and that the night hadn't ended when it came out. In fact, it seemed as if she'd just moved to the next phase. At the bar, on the phone, on the street, out there, it all seemed to be loaded with an expectation of silence. I looked over at the counter, then to the door, and I felt like the next thing that happened, one touch, one by step, a shadow, it would not be just a detail that's weird. When he came out, and my eyes turned automatically to your phone, on the same machine, backed up in the same place, with the one wrapped yarn from the same rough, nothing has changed there, and yet it was all four. In the silence that was coming from him was not a neutral, it was loaded. It was not the absence of sound, it was waiting for us. As for the phone, I knew more than I do, as if they were just waiting for the right time to be able to talk. I was looking at it for a few seconds too long. The bar went live, people laughing, someone's asking for another round of an old song playing, but I was in a different pace. In my mind, I repeated the scenes, was reorganizing the details, trying to build a logic to where I was feeling, the connection. The question is, at the entrance to his, the look at the end. Everything seemed to be connected by an invisible thread, such that you don't see it, but you feel pressure to a few people. I thought I'd call you back. The idea came about almost as an afterthought, an attempt to regain control of the situation. I care. You may choose to pursue the mystery. Maybe you heard a voice. A common explanation is trivial, something that is des montants, all of that built in. My hand went so far as to move in a slow, hesitant, as if he were testing out their own guts. And it was there that I had to stop. Something stopped me. It was not fear the simple, for those who are in the US back in quickly. It was an insight to the end, almost a quiet, that it's hard to ignore. I knew in that moment that this contact has not been made to shut in that way. What's the silence now? He was a part of the game. You call back, which could mean crossing a line that I don't yet fully understand. Some of the decisions that don't require a hurry, they will ask you, the listener. And what I felt was that the phone had not finished saying what he needed. It felt so strange, like being at the beginning of a journey without a map. I was under the impression that there was something falling out of my league, like pieces being moved on behind the scenes that I didn't go. And at the same time, I was right there, in the center of it all, without even wanting to. The mindset that I always used to let me protect you, don't get involved, don't ask too much, don't poke at in the past, it was starting to break down. Because if the truth is hidden, it starts to get closer to her. She does not ask for a license. It just requires additional space. I wonder if he has also sensed it. If when you get out of there, he's carried that same sense of something that had been left behind, waiting for the next move. Maybe he had the answers. I don't even know, thank you. Maybe he would have been as close to anything as much as I was far enough away. This difference in perspective, I filled him. I felt like I was being pulled into a story larger than my own, and this will have a profound impact because it forces us to revisit who we are when net neutrality is no longer an option. The phone stayed quiet for a while. No light, no ringtone, no vibration. And even then, I knew that this silence was not a final judgment. It was only a short break. A space is left between the two events. As your breathing fastened prior to the revelation, I've thought about how some things don't make sense. And then, when you look back and see that all the signs were all there, spread out in a discreet way, hoping that someone had the courage to connect the dots. Deep down, I knew that the next contact would not be a simple phone call. It would not be an easy thing to ignore or turn off with a click. It would be something you would choose to light, position, maybe to match. The sense of alertness is back, firm it. But now it is mixed with a strange acceptance. I was beginning to understand that this transformation is internal. There was no more like to be broken. The journey had advanced a step further, even though no one had moved physically. Tomorrow, at this same time, has a new video available for you. In the sequel of this story, we'll bring to light the things now they were only suggested, stored in silence. Now here's a video popping up on the screen. Watch out. Because from here, what seems to be the only odd begins to unravel, and after that, nothing remains hidden. If you have stuck with me this far, it's because something in the story you have accomplished. Maybe not a mystery in and of itself, but because of that funny feeling that of recognizing as the small decisions, the silence and the unexpected encounters can change the course of everything. That's exactly why this channel exists, to tell the stories that aren't just listen, but to feel and to reflect on them together. If this is the kind of narrative it makes sense to you, if you sign up as a simple way to keep that content and to ensure that the conversation just keep on going from here. Before you go out, write a comment telling us what you scored in the final. It can be a phrase, a feeling, or a word that sums this moment is something like, "The silence says more than a question and answer," or "That was where it all changed." I love to read these prints because they show how each person is living a story in a different way. And if you will, at some point, you feel a connection with the weather, with the voltage, or in this journey, a silent transformation, leaves and the like. It's not just a one-click. It is a sign that this trade-off is worth it. And so, as not to break the rhythm now, there's a video right here on the side, which complements this subject, and it expands even further with this kind of story. Click and keeps me there as well.